The ink on the campaign posters barely had time to dry, and yet France's frenzied snap legislative election races are nearly over. President Macron hoped to clear the air with his shock dissolution of parliament. But after the far right's unprecedented surge and so many unholy alliances and tactical withdrawals ahead of the runoffs, good luck predicting the makeup of the next National Assembly. One certainty, Marine Le Pen's national rally will boast the most seats. How many, though? How close or how far from an outright majority? After the highest turnout in decades in the first round of these legislative elections, what will voters think of their options come Sunday? And who do they want to govern France? Yes, the ballots will have been counted, but the horse trading will be far from over. Can a nation that historically prefers Bonapartist figureheads to Nordic-style policy compromises try its hand at grand coalitions or technocratic arbiters? Or should we brace ourselves for a whole new level of uncertainty? Today in the France 24 debate, we're talking about France's campaign finale. With us from the Rhône Valley town of Tain-l'Hermitage, outgoing member of parliament, Mireille Clapeau from Emmanuel Macron's centrists. Thank you for being with us.
Hello.
He was a candidate in Paris in these elections. Arnaud Dacier of the branch of the Les Républicains party that decided to side with Marine Le Pen's party. You're a former Paris city councillor. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
France 24 politics editor Mark Perlman is with us as well. Good to see you.
Pleasure.
Reminder, you can listen, like, and subscribe to the podcast version of the France 24 debate. Pity the pollster who barely had time to get a snapshot between Tuesday night's deadline for submitting candidacies and this coming Friday midnight's electoral silence deadline. Sophie Lamotte has the latest.
Left-wing alliance, the New Popular Front, along with President Macron's centrist coalition, together are pulling out all of the stops to urge voters to block the national rally in Sunday's vote and deny them a majority in Parliament. Their strategy has been to withdraw candidates from three-way runoffs to block the far right.
It's really to hinder the national rally because it frees up a reservoir of votes that can then be reallocated either to a left-wing candidate or to a centrist candidate, and this will cause the national rally to lose a fairly significant number of seats.
A total of 224 candidates have pulled out, and their strategy appears to be paying off. The latest polls show that the national rally could get just 210 to 240 seats, far less than the 289 seats needed for an absolute majority. The far-right alliance, who dominated the first round of these elections, remains confident that they're at the doorstep of victory.
No, I'm very confident. The French people have a real desire for change. They expressed this desire for change, this freedom from the establishment in the first round. Because in reality, the only ones capable of having an absolute majority are the National Rally with our Republican allies who followed Éric Ciotti. We are the only ones who can offer a perspective to France with a majority of projects, a majority of construction, while the others only propose to fight the National Rally and once again plunge the country into a sort of quagmire.
The latest polls forecast that the New Popular Front is set to win between 170 and 200 seats, but that will depend entirely on whether or not voters respond to the plea to block the far right. Meanwhile, the left-wing alliance and the president's camp insist that their joint strategy is simply to counter the far right and is by no means a coalition between the centrist and the left.
Mark Perlman, 170, 200 seats you heard in that report, but we saw the graph with an update, different polling agencies with different figures. So there's the numbers from Wednesday. These are the numbers from Thursday from, again, a different polling agency, IFOP.
Right.
Can we talk about a momentum, or is it just impossible to say which way the wind is blowing?
I mean, clearly the wind is blowing towards a relative majority for the national rally and not so much towards an absolute majority, which is what their leaders have been demanding. They say, we will only go if we get an absolute majority. This seems far-fetched. Obviously, we have to be careful with the polls, especially with seat projections. You see the range is,
170 from yesterday to 240 from today.
Okay, so it's a 70, the 70 MPs difference.
And 289, just to remind our viewers,
that's the magic number for the absolute majority. But it seems now a remote possibility. Why? Because of all that's happened between Sunday night, when the results were in, and Tuesday, 6 p.m. Paris time, which was when you had to register as a candidate for the second round. There were over 300 three-way races, and over two-thirds of those become two-way races because the candidates, both from the leftist alliance and the Macron camp, in the vast majority of cases decided to withdraw. So this clearly changed the equation, and the pollsters assume that this will not favor the national rally, which makes their getting to 289 more difficult today. Even getting close to that seems more difficult. But again, I'm using seems. We have to be careful because obviously this is uncharted territory. We don't know if people will go to vote, will stay home, and whether this Republican front, as the alliance against the national rally, will function in theory and also in practice.
The Republican front, which is an expression that's familiar to French politics junkies, basically it means a firewall against the far right, parties that don't agree on much, who agree to bow out in favor of one another in the second round of voting. Mireille Clapeau, you failed to qualify for the second round in your district where you are. Some in your party wavered over throwing support for the far left. You have a far left candidate from Jean-Luc Mélenchon's LFI party running in your district. You have bowed out and endorsed him.
So in my constituency, two main candidates were eliminated. I was one of them. It's a pity, but we have to follow the decision of electors. And two candidates are remaining, one from the National Rally, which I hope will never be elected as MP because it would be a disaster. And another one from the Nouveau Front Populaire, it's from the left alliance. And I declared on Monday evening that I was decided to vote for the left, for the Nouveau Front Populaire, because it's terrifying to imagine that there would be a national rally MP in my constituency. And I ask reasonable electors to do the same. Of course, I'm not the owner of their voices, but I think with my experience that we should make everything to avoid a national rally MP in my constituency.
And just to answer one of Mark Perlman's questions, just when it comes to your own constituency, France doesn't have postal voting, but we do have proxy voting. You can give authorization to someone else to vote for you. There were a lot of proxy votes before the first round, and that turned out to be a bellwether for the fact that turnout was at its highest in decades for legislative elections. Has there been a lot of requests for proxy votes for the second round where you are?
Yes, I don't have the figures exactly, but there is a movement, there is a trend that people mobilize to go to vote either personally or through a proxy. But I have to admit that on the first round, it was not favorable to the Macron camp, which I belong to. And maybe these proxies will be in favor of either left or far right, I cannot tell you.
All right, so it's only an indicator of a higher turnout, not necessarily of what the result may be. Paris traffic could not keep away socialist city councillor Gabrielle Siri-Rouari, deputy mayor of Paris's 18th arrondissement. Thanks for joining us here in the France 24 debate. Arnaud Dacier, your thoughts on these? This is the standard fare for any legislative election. Between the first and second rounds, there is what Mark Perlman called the Republican front that establishes itself. Your thoughts on the fact that overall there's been a lot of alliances. We've gone from, we've had something like 224 candidates withdraw between the two rounds of the election. How do you view that?
I think it's allowed to do that, so I have nothing to say about it. They can do it, so they do it. I think the French people doesn't really like to see that, because you have people that have nothing to agree on, that are withdrawing their candidacy to favor another candidate with which they have not been able to govern the country or to make any alliance during the last 2 or 7 years. So it doesn't make any sense from the political point of view. It doesn't give a clear indication of the policies that would be put in place by some, impossible majority. And so I think people are very confused.
Are they confused?
On one side, you have something that is very confusing, unclear, and looks like political games. And on the other side, you have a very clear direction, like it or not, but you have a clear direction for the country. And this clear direction for the country, when you ask in the polls to the French people, what do they think about immigration, security, and taxes, and public spending, you have a big majority, by 50, sometimes 70%, in favor of these policies. So I think it's still possible to win a clear majority on Sunday. I think there will be my guess is there will be demobilization on the center and the left side, because nobody understands what's going on, and it's unclear. It doesn't.
Is it unclear? Because I asked the question.
You will have a strong mobilization on the other side.
I asked the question whether it's unclear because you have values that are spelled out in the French Constitution. And the reason it's called the Republican Front is because the National Rally, with its French first preferences, is clearly outside of those values. And that is a clear choice.
That's one thing. I don't think the French people are against that.
2/3 of them voted for candidates other than those of the far right.
It was not the main topic of the campaign. So they voted for many things, but not specifically on this point. It doesn't make a project. It's not a political project. It's still a negative and opposition strategy. It doesn't bring any proposition for the country. To be against something. Okay, you can be against something. It doesn't mean what are they for together? What are they going to do? Nobody knows. And I don't think it's a strong motivation for people to vote for.
Gabriel Sibourouari, do you agree that because politics makes strange bedfellows, but in this case, having a communist, say, who endorses a conservative or vice versa, it's too far. It's too much of a stretch.
Well, I think one of the only good news of these past few days is, as you said, the Republican Front still seem to exist with the withdrawal of more than 200. It was actually 224 candidates that withdrew in order to avoid that the Rassemblement National comes to power. Because I think that in this country, we still believe in defending the rights of women. We still believe in protecting the environment. We still believe, well, we want to fight, sorry, sir, but I think being against racism, anti-Semitism is still something that is, and that's a good news, is something that is common to the French people and to our history. So that's a good news that we may have a chance to avoid that the Rassemblement National comes to power. And of course, I would like the Nouveau Front Populaire to win this election. But if it's not the case, then we have to stand for our democracy, we have to stand for our rights, we have to stand for our country. And yes, please. I mean, it's any other solution that the Rassemblement National taking power in this country is a better solution.
But we do see divisions even within that so-called Republican Front, making it harder to establish this firewall, if you will, that goes from the conservatives to the communists, is the fact that there is this firebrand France Unbound leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He opted, for instance, on Sunday night to bring up the Palestinian cause with this optics. He had a call for unity, but standing right behind him was the Franco-Palestinian MEP Rima Hassan in the frame. Even though he hails from the same France Unbowed party as François Ruffin, who faces a tough re-election battle despite the pullout of a centrist candidate, Ruffin saying this Thursday that if he wins, he won't sit in parliament in the same group as that of his party boss.
We've had a tough 3 weeks because we've got a liability. Look, you've heard him. It's Mélenchon, 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 as an obstacle to the vote. And in places like here, in working class parts of the provinces, that's what's holding things up.
Gabriel Sivir-Waouri, is it really that big of a problem? Is Jean-Luc Mélenchon the French Jeremy Corbyn, if you will?
No, it's not that big of a problem because in no way is Jean-Luc Mélenchon going to become prime minister. In no way is it going to happen. And people who tell you this are lying to you because they want to favor the Rassemblement National, basically. So let me explain why it's not going to happen, because the Nouveau Front Populaire is an alliance of 5 different parties, and not one of them is, and not even the France Insoumise, who's conflicted about it, as you just showed it on the screen, not one of this party is supporting the name of Jean-Luc Mélenchon as Prime Minister. So that's not a danger, actually, at all. It's not an option. And again, he was instrumentalized to frighten people to vote for the Nouveau Front Populaire, who is the only solution to actually defend, again, as I said, defend women, but also defend workers, raise salaries. I think you asked, sir, what we would stand for and not what we would fight. Actually, we would stand for a rise of salaries, whereas your party, the Rassemblement National, always opposed and in the National Assembly always voted against the rise of the minimum wages, for instance.
It depends how you do it, but it's in the program and in a different way to do it.
But yeah, but if it's in the program but you don't apply it while you can and you vote against, then you're just a hypocrite.
We don't want to force enterprises to raise salaries. I can tell you that for sure. Yeah. But we want to reduce
even when the
social
inflation is so high.
and taxes to improve what remains in the pocket of the working people.
And then
it's a different way to achieve the same goal.
There is still something that is not clear: is how you finance actually this cut
by reducing
on taxes.
Expenses.
Yes, because
by reducing public expenses.
Because, for instance, your biggest cut would be on VAT, if I understand correctly. It would be what Jordan Bardella presented as a priority. He could not even answer how he would finance and where he would find these 7 billion euros. 7 billion euros.
By reducing public expenses, I just told you.
Okay.
And you can make billions and billions of reduction of spending.
It's weird that he could not even answer that during the press conference while he presented the program.
We still need to understand where it's possible to cut expenses.
Okay, you want to come to power in 5 days, and you don't know where you would cut expenses.
If you come in power, you have a few months and a few years to do your work. You don't have a magic stick to do everything in 3 days.
The election is Sunday.
Yeah, but after that,
all right, let me bring in Mireille Clapeau on this. Mireille Clapeau, first of all, on before we go into what are the possible scenarios on Sunday night, around you, people who are from the center right, from the right, are they going to hold their noses and vote for the left-wing candidate in the second round like you're endorsing? Or do you know many who say, no, we're going to go fishing instead?
I think that most of the people I know congratulated me for declaring so frankly that we have to vote for a Nouveau Front Populaire. But I am worried about something. We have Les Républicains, which is very high in my constituency. And Les Républicains should be a government party, and their behavior is completely the bad one, because their program was quite the same of National Rally one, with order, anti-immigration, etc. And they don't want to incite the voters to vote for the Nouveau Front Populaire. So in a way, it's a way to tell the electors, you can vote a national rally, which is completely incredible because the trend here in my constituency in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes is for Wauquiez. Wauquiez, he's a leader, and it was against the Ciotti branch who decided to present some joint candidates with a national rally. So in principle, they should be part of the Republican front, but they are they have so much fear of the next local elections, and they fear to lose the municipality. So they prefer to have a national rally than to help the Nouveau Front Populaire. So it's
Arnaud Dacier, let me bring you in on this because you're from the Les Républicains party, and the party split apart over these legislative elections. Some siding with the National Rally like you have, and others against it.
Yeah, because they are still impressed by the narrative we just heard a few minutes ago about racism and anti-Semitism, when the reality of anti-Semitism and racism and tolerance to political violence now is on the far left. And so the narrative about the necessity of doing a Republican front when you are calling to vote for people that are actually very tolerant to racism, anti-Semitism, and political violence, it just doesn't fly, it just doesn't work. And the people like me from Les Républicains, we can see that the program that is proposed by the National Rally and Mr. Ciotti is very close to our program, very close to our beliefs. And that's why I joined the coalition, by the way. Because what I see in the National Rally today is what I saw in the RPR when I was young. It's the same people voting the same program, the same ideas.
Let's put that to the test for a second, because the National Rally says it's ready for power, but a party that claims it's gone mainstream, for a party that claims to have gone mainstream, the vetting of some candidates is coming under scrutiny. Camille Knight has that story.
Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella have spent years working on changing the face of the National Rally. But a closer look at some of their candidates would suggest it's been a cosmetic makeover more than a substantial one. Ludivine Daoudi qualified for the second round in a constituency in Calvados. She's now dropped out after a picture resurfaced of her wearing a Nazi Luftwaffe officer's cap, a picture she said was in bad taste. Paul Vert de Soras, meanwhile, is through to the second round in a constituency in Mayenne. When asked about racism within the National Rally, this was her response.
At the
National Rally, we have Jews, Muslims and Spaniards. I myself am from Catalonia. My grandfather was born in Barcelona. I have a Jewish eye doctor and a Muslim dentist.
Annie-Claire Bell is a National Rally candidate in a neighbouring constituency. An archive report by West France was dug up on social media, revealing she'd taken a local official hostage for several hours with her husband back in 1995. Bell brought a rifle, which she even fired inside the town hall, and local newspapers say she was sentenced to 10 months behind bars. In the Jura, meanwhile, National Rally candidate Thierry Mosca is placed under reinforced conservatorship, which technically makes him ineligible, though hasn't stopped him from submitting his candidacy.
I had to wait for a few discussions to end and for some advice as well, because I'm not a veteran when it comes to politics.
An appeal can only invalidate his potential election after the ballot.
Arnaud Dacier, this is not the party of Jacques Chirac or Charles de Gaulle, is it?
You had problematic people in the party of Jacques Chirac, and Jacques Chirac was called a fascist, by the way, in the 80s, by the same people we have here. So they are always calling people that are on the right side of themselves, they are calling them fascist very easily. So it's nothing new to me, you know. So you always have, I've been managing political parties, you always have mistakes, you always have clumsy people, you always have problematic people. in the
But why
parties.
didn't they vet them better?
What's important is what is the reaction of the party to these people. Some of them have been fired from their candidacy. And you have the same thing, even worse, on the left side. You have a guy in Avignon who is the leader.
The ones we showed, by the way, are running on Sunday. They're running on Sunday.
In Avignon, you have a young guy who has been is running for the Popular Front, who's leading a violent political organization with 8 people that have been in police in the last days because they have attacked a 15-year-old Jew because he's Jew. And there were 8 people, and they hit him. And this guy is candidate for the left. So we have no lesson to receive about that because you have even worse people on the left side.
Gabrielle Siri-Wary, worse people on the
worst
left?
People that, because it was an interesting subject, and actually you could have added some other candidates who are indeed running on Sunday. So there is this candidate who claimed that he still has doubts that the gas chambers existed. And after backing Jean-Marie Le Pen, who claimed these gas chambers are a point of detail in history. So this guy is running on Sunday. You have this other candidate, Françoise Billot in Brittany. She published on Facebook a tribute to Philippe Pétain. And you have another candidate, Thomas Lutz, who publicly talked about Untermenschen, which is basically a Nazi phrase.
You have communists, and communism has killed 100 million people in the world.
Yes.
So what
we don't have any communist candidate who has been convicted for racism or anti-Semitism, and I think it's pretty clear now, and it has always been clear that anti-Semitism is on your side. And I have one question, if I may,
we don't have hundreds
to you,
of people,
because I think it's very interesting indeed to look at the profile of candidates. And I have a question to you, because you present yourself as a great patriot, a great defender of our country, a great defender of France. And I was wondering whether you were disturbed by the fact that the Kremlin, so Vladimir Putin's Russia, right now is influencing the French elections to help your party, the Rassemblement National, to help this election by manipulating social networks. So I was wondering whether you had a problem with that or not.
Russia is trying to influence many elections in many countries. Russia is our enemy.
To help
it's
their
very
allies.
Clear. They're trying to create chaos wherever they are, and they are not working for us. They are working for themselves. They are working for the interest of Russia. And right now, what you are doing is helping them pushing their agenda by using their propaganda to create confusion.
But
Arnaud Dacier,
what we call a useful idiot right now, because
I'm going to answer to that. If I may, because I was just called an idiot.
Useful idiot.
I think that's very interesting what you're saying, because Vladimir Putin's directly actually supported.
So it shows that it doesn't
but also,
help.
I don't know if you know that, but
maybe
you should know that, because now you're running for the Rassemblement National. But you know that 15 candidates actually were paid by Russia to go to Russia and to scrutinize elections over there between 2018 and 2021. So it was actually something that was plainly organized with the Rassemblement National.
It was before the 22 invasion of Ukraine. It was before that.
One last thing, if I may, and then we can go to the next thing. But I think it's very interesting that voters indeed know who they're voting for, and I'm not surprised that you don't have a problem with the manipulation of information, because let me recall what you do for a living. You're the co-founder of Avisa Partners, a company that has been banned from Wikipedia for manipulation of information, and that is well known for having published fake news, having used fake names to publish these articles and to back fake claims to support big companies. And let me just name one of them. It's the fact that what you claim in one of these fake articles, that coffee would be as dangerous as glyphosate. So that's very interesting that you present yourself as standing for France, but you're certainly not standing for our democracy.
No, listen, that's a topic I know very well, because I'm a professional expert about it, so I can talk about it. So what you're telling me now it's fake news going from the far left
Fake news.
journal Mediapart. It's very well known.
It's Radio France, it's Le Monde, it's all over the press.
They just picked
there have
a
been
story from Mediapart.
No, there have been investigations.
One at a time. Arnaud Dacier.
This is a typical Stalinist technique, which is to put a finger to your opponent, and instead of talking about ideas, about program, about reality, we're talking about people, about the past, about very old stories.
But people do politics.
All right, let's talk about a new story. Let's talk about a new story here.
Fake news against me right now. Accusing me of doing fake news.
Talk about
all over the press. All over the press. You can check.
Press sometimes is also.
Let's talk about what is actually happened in the last 24 hours. State media in Russia showing its preference, as is that of the Kremlin. This is a tweet from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Moscow saying French officials won't be able to ignore these profound shifts in the attitudes in the vast majority of citizens. Alongside it, there you see publishing a photo of a smiling Marine Le Pen. Arnaud Dacier, your job is to be your day job is to be a lobbyist, and you've lobbied not for Russia but for the other side. So
exactly.
How do you feel? How do you feel about the fact that you have this endorsement from the Kremlin?
I am 200% pro-Ukraine, so I have nothing.
But are you personally conflicted about this?
Absolutely not, because it's a typical technique of influence, which is exactly doing the opposite of what it's supposed to do. If the Kremlin was really supporting the national rally, they will not publish this tweet. This is the most clumsy way to do it. And if you are falling in this trap,
on their primetime shows like Soloviev, they've been endorsing Marine Le Pen constantly all week.
If you want to help Marine Le Pen and you are Russia, you would not endorse her on Twitter. This is the clumsiest way to do it. And so they are doing it because they are not endorsing Marine Le Pen.
So you don't see a problem with this at all?
No, I see a problem when you are using that as a political tool to compromise.
Remember, the next Prime Minister of France will have access to defense secrets, will have access to...
What the Kremlin is doing is working because we are talking about it, and you are using it against the national rally. So it's a proof that it's being done by Russia to compromise the national rally, because you are using it to do it.
Because, well, in this case, maybe our intelligence services are also being used because they claim today in Le Monde that we might be excluded from exchanges of information with our allies on the danger that Russia represents, while I recall Vladimir Putin has been threatening several times of using the atomic bomb.
So Mark Perman,
the intelligence services are worried also.
I've seen that. I don't believe a word of that. I don't believe it will happen. It didn't even happen when you came with the Communist Party in power in 1981. It didn't stop any collaboration between the US and the Five Eyes. On the contrary.
But that's a reason I would rather believe the intelligence services.
The leader of the service has been nominated by Mr. Macron. He's a political friend. He's doing his political work.
That brings us to...
So you don't want your party to be nominated,
one at a time,
actually?
please.
You think it's Macron
one at a time.
that should stay in power?
I think the leader of the secret services right now is doing political game,
That brings us to what are the prerogatives of a French prime minister? Because that's been also a topic of discussion during this campaign, especially with sensitive matters.
Well, it's going to be a matter of debate and probably a fight if the National Rally wins and has a prime minister. And Marine Le Pen clearly already set the stage for this when she said, well, the president, the chief of the army is just an honorary title.
Commander-in-chief.
Yeah.
Which is what the president.
Yeah, and so she's already laying the ground, because this is obviously, let's say, with foreign affairs, to simplify, foreign affairs, military affairs is the prerogative of the president, and domestic affairs is of the prime minister. Obviously, there's overlapping, and Marine Le Pen wanted to make a point. We just talked about Russia and Ukraine. She said, well, we're not in favor of sending troops to Ukraine, and the prime minister is the one who would decide to finance such an operation. We're against it. Jordan Bardella, if he becomes prime minister, will not be in favor of that. So obviously there will be tensions. On the other side, the president is also the one signing decrees, nominations, and so on, and he could delay this, withhold, discuss, no, I don't like that person. So there could be a paralysis.
And what about intelligence briefings?
Intelligence briefings, normally it's the purview of the president. But the prime minister also gets some intelligence briefings and will probably fight to get some access, especially when it comes to domestic intelligence threats, for instance, because he is the prime minister, the interior minister depends on him. So yes, I mean, we've had cohabitation 3 times before.
Starting in 1986.
Yeah, 1986, 93, and 97. And there were some awkward moments where you had Jacques Chirac and François Mitterrand sitting together at a European Union meeting and saying, you know, we're going to have only one press conference, but the 2 of us will be there. But eventually, they were able to work out their differences because it was the traditional right and the traditional left. There, if there is to be a cohabitation, it would be totally unusual because you would have a national rally prime minister versus a lame duck Emmanuel Macron, clearly. And it's going to be a tough time. It's going to be a very, very tough time. And it's not certain that it's going to be a conflict.
This is the perfect segue. Tell us again for our viewers, what are the possible scenarios at 8 p.m. on Sunday night?
Well, there's one scenario. It's absolute majority for the national rally, over 289 seats. It seems now less and less certain because of the Republican front that came back from nowhere, essentially. The second scenario is a relative majority. There, it also depends. If it's very close to absolute majority, they could probably get allies and get over the 289 thresholds. But it could also be a small relative majority where you need maybe 80, maybe 100 MPs to reach an absolute majority, in which case the assumption is that Jordan Bardella, because that's what they've said, would not accept to become prime minister. And there, it's really uncharted territory because what happens, it could be a kind of technocratic government. Emmanuel Macron decided, okay, there's no majority, so I'm appointing a technocrat, central banker, you name it. In Italy, they've had this before. Or there could be this grand coalition, unholy alliance, where essentially there would be a majority from the part of the conservative camp that didn't go with Marine Le Pen, up to the communists without France unbowed. But this would mean that the alliance that you put together hastily and probably that it would have to split, that the socialists like you, the Greens and the communists would have to agree to form a minority government, but it would be very fragile because, you know, I don't see the communists voting the same budget as the conservatives. So yes.
Mireille Clapeau, a couple of questions on the back of what Marc just said. First off, again, there's a scenario under which the far right has an outright majority. We know that's pretty clear what will happen. Jordan Bardella, their lead candidate, becomes prime minister. After what's the threshold above which Emmanuel Macron has no other option but to give the far right the chance, at least, to form that government?
Well, of course, we are speaking about a nightmare, but unfortunately, I think that the nightmare will become true. Because I think that this dissolution was so incredible. It may be the idea of the president to leave the majority and the prime minister to the national rally and to demonstrate that it doesn't go when they have the power. Of course, it's a nightmare, but it could be one of the hypotheses. So it could be that Prime Minister is designed by the president, comes from far right.
And you heard Marc Perman talk about a grand coalition. Could the French be like the Germans and form grand coalitions?
It could happen, yes. It will depend on the ratios of different groups. We see that on both the France, La France Insoumise, François Ruffin is saying that he does not accept the authority of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. So it could come to a central bloc, and I hope that there will be reasonable MPs that will be against this national rally. So let's hope that it will be better than the expected nightmare.
Gabriel Siri-Wary, if let's say the far right doesn't have its outright majority, and that there is this grand coalition, won't the voters say, wait a minute, we voted for one thing and got another?
Well, I think we are in exceptional circumstances, and I think the voters and everybody understands that exceptional solutions will have to be found if indeed the Rassemblement National does not have the majority on Sunday. I think we need to do anything, again, to preserve our democracy, to preserve the right of all citizens, be them binationals, be them women, because we know and
but what would be the will of the people if the National Rally, again, is the largest party, but doesn't have an outright majority? What's the will of the people? Is it, because you heard three scenarios spelled out by Mark Perlman. Which one will it be for you?
Well, it would be a great coalition that avoids that any drop of power is granted to the Rassemblement National. So it would be, of course, I'm from the Nouveau Front Populaire, so I want us to win, but I want us at any cost to preserve our democracy. And we've seen in this campaign the level of violence against foreigners, against women, rise very, very quickly. We're at great danger right now. So I think it's exceptional circumstances. And again, I think the French people would understand. Of course, I mean, I don't favor and I don't want that a prime minister comes from the party of Macron, who puts us in this very dangerous situation. So we would have to agree on something that is pretty new. And you said it, it's actually not the political French culture to form these types of coalitions. But again, exceptional circumstances, and the absolute priority is to avoid that. Yes.
Yeah,
well,
so
sorry, that was not very convincing. Everything you said on this.
Once again, it's a purely negative and emotional project to be against. To be against the will of the people. Okay, great. And they call themselves Democrats.
Two-thirds of the people did not vote for you. Did not vote for you because they don't want you to have.
How many people voted for Emmanuel Macron party during the last two elections? 25%. Still, he had a majority. He was elected president. He's been running the country for 7 years.
Yes,
and so this coalition has gathered between 35 to 38%, depending how you had the small candidates, and you will not let them reach power. And you call yourselves Democrats. It's funny.
My God.
But I think it will not happen, this grand coalition, because there's no glue between them, nothing in common. By the way, they already said it will not happen. The guys on the right side said they will never work with the far left, and the people from the far left party, they already said that they will never put anything different from their own political agenda. So this great coalition will not work. What you might have is a kind of technocratic government that will just manage the daily business. And I think this is a real danger, because we can't afford that right now. The situation of the country is really bad, and we need a government. We need a strategy. We need clear policies.
We will have a government in any case, huh?
A reminder that the president can't call, as you were telling us earlier, another snap election for 1 year after doing this one. Last night, I was cycling home from this very studio. I get to the Eiffel Tower, and I'd forgotten. There's the construction stands for the Olympics. Just a reminder that this is the month of July in Paris. We're supposed to be talking about the games that open in 22 days' time. Listening not just to this conversation, but the minds of the French are not on the Olympics at all, and won't be on Monday either, Mark Perlman.
No, it's true. I mean, the Olympics have been hijacked, if you want, by Emmanuel Macron's own decision. And clearly, this has surprised many of the French, many of the people around him. And people are suddenly, yes, worrying about those elections. I mean, so yes, the mood is rather somber. Obviously, people will then turn the page towards the summer holiday and the Olympics, but not until Sunday night. Normally on Sunday, you know what will happen. But the thing is, Sunday will probably not be that decisive. It's the following days that will be decisive.
Yeah.
And so it will be a rather unusual Bastille Day on July the 14th.
I think you found one idea that can gather us all around this table, the only one that this decision was a total disaster.
Third round begins Sunday at 8 p.m. and we'll be covering it right here on France 24. Marc Promen, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Gabriel Siriwari, Arnaud Dacier, and Mireille Clapeau for being with us from La Drôme in the Rhône Valley. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.